My niece, my mom, and myself were about to have breakfast. My mom came with all the food, 2 big and 1 small forks, and 2 knives. My niece was very happy to have a big fork on her own plate and took one, and I took one too. My mom left for the other room to grab her phone and didn't touch the table at all after she left to do that. My niece was cutting her food and she couldn't cut the food that she had into smaller pieces. After she tried, she gave up and turned to me and asked me if I could cut the food into smaller pieces, and I said, "Yeah, give me your fork and knife." She gave me the knife and I said, "Where is your fork?" And she said, "It's in my hand." And I looked down at her hand, but she wasn't holding the fork. She said that she was confused and she asked me if I took the fork while she wasn't looking. And I told her that I would never do that. I was confused as well, and we searched every corner of the room, but we couldn't find that stupid fork anywhere. I turned to my mom and asked if she had seen the fork at all, and she just pretended not to hear me and just kept messing around with her phone. I asked 3 times and she got mad at me. She said, "It's in front of you," and when I turned, I saw 2 small forks on the table. I asked my niece if she saw these forks before, and she said, "Only the small one. I took one big one, and you took the other one," she said. My mom didn't answer us when we asked her again, pretending not to hear us. My niece took a small fork, and my mom cut her food. We were confused, and we searched around a little bit more, but we couldn't find it anywhere, and we've never seen that fork again. It's kind of weird how things just kind of disappear sometimes out of our reality for no reason. 4.5 years ago, I had a job selling cookies and fudge to tourists in my city. Occasionally, someone would come into the shop drunk to flirt with me, but not very often, as I was this awkward 20-year-old with bad acne and a terrible sense of humor. One memorable evening, a much older gentleman entered, and I offered him a small sample of fudge as I was required to do. He looked like he could have been in his mid-50s with energy of a 30-year-old. He had a thick frame with thick white hair, a narrow face, and piercing eyes. It felt like he was hitting on me, and it was very confusing. He was older, flamboyant, and he wanted me to show him around, quote-unquote. He asked me when I would be getting off work that night. I had neither the social skills nor the confidence to tell him to F off. I agreed to meet him after work and wondered if I was actually going to show him around town, and if that meant something more than my innocent mind was willing to believe at that time. Feeling kind of frightened and helpless at the same time, I told my male coworker what had just happened, and he told me that he would walk me to my car after work so that I could tell that white-haired man just never mind and to just leave me alone. Truth be told, I didn't expect the white-haired man to be waiting for me outside several hours later, but he was there. My coworker walked me out of the building, and as we hurried past, I looked at him and said, "Sorry, I can't. I just can't." The man bowed his head low and nodded as if he fully understood. He seemed deeply disappointed, though. Fast forward a year later, and I'm working at a new job in the same area. I had been there for about a month when a new face entered the scene. They hired a young man with a thick frame and thick dark hair, a narrow face, and piercing eyes. The young man was flirtatious, intense, and just my type. He was fun and flamboyant, and we were almost dating really fast, but I had to put the brakes on it for personal reasons. I was deeply upset about it for a long time. He used to talk to me a lot, and he was the first guy that I ever met that really liked me back seriously. I know logically that they are 2 different people, one an older guy looking to have a good time, and one a young man who I now miss a lot. Sometimes I choose to believe that it was a time traveler, and that this is some kind of a crazy story about a time traveler, because if it could be true, it means that he missed me too. I live an hour away from my old hometown, so I call my mom every 2 weeks to discuss the news about everyone that I don't see often. Before summer started, I called her and asked about my sister. She told me her dog, whose name is Honey, had unfortunately passed away. I was so upset about this news, as she was a wonderful sheepdog with so much personality that I really bonded with for many years. I remember shedding tears about it, and after I got off the phone, I told my boyfriend about how upset I was to hear the news. I then called my sister and we reminisced about her dog and talked about where she was burying her, etc., and how her son was really sad. Fast forward to Thanksgiving at my parents' house a couple of weeks ago. My sister and her husband had gone out of state to spend the holidays with her in-laws, so she left her dog with my parents to watch while they were away. I walked into my parents' house only to find the dog, Honey, healthy as can be, sitting in a dog bed in my parents' living room. I immediately bristled as I was shocked. I laid on the floor to give her a whole bunch of love and asked my mom why she had told me that Honey had passed away. She had no idea when I heard that and didn't know what I was talking about. I was floored, just laying there petting her and just loving her and just being there in total disbelief, not believing what I was seeing. I took her outside and threw the ball at her for about 30 minutes at least, probably longer. When my boyfriend and I were driving home, I mentioned it to him, and he said that he was glad that I brought it up because he absolutely remembers me discussing it with him, and he knows that I would never make something like that up, ever in my life. My father unexpectedly passed away 6 months before I graduated from high school. This was about a year ago, and his unexpected passing took a very heavy toll on me, and it resonated with me for years. A few years after he passed, I was driving in town and took a left turn down this street. After I turned onto this new street, everything suddenly started to feel desolate. This street is a one-way, two-lane road with me in the left lane. After making the turn, I noticed a truck in the right-hand lane stop at a red light roughly a block down the street. It's the only other vehicle there. As I get closer, I see that it's a very old Toyota pickup truck from the early 1980s. The exact same model and color as my dad's. This truck was beyond rare due to its age, and as I come closer to the stoplight, this intense feeling comes over me that it's him driving it. As I come close to the red light and make a full stop, I look to my right, and my dad is in the driver's seat of the truck, and he's simply just staring forward, not looking at me at all. I then quickly turn my head forward, and I say to myself, what did I just see? This can't be happening. And I quickly pull ahead, completely bewildered, and turn on to another street. To this day, I cannot explain what happened and have searched everywhere to see if anybody has ever experienced something similar to me, but it's been an unsuccessful search. So here's some background on this story I'm about to tell. I was trying to get over an ex at that time, and my friend Maggie randomly texted me saying, "Hey, would you oppose going on a date with Audrey?" Audrey is a mutual friend, and I say, no. So I tried to talk to her, but I don't feel any sparks at all. No chemistry. The next day I tried to ask a group of friends to hang out. There's one girl in the group, and one of my other friends in the group texted me saying, "Dude, stop hitting on Alexandra. Focus on Audrey." And I'm like, huh? Later that day I was spaced out at a traffic light. My mind had just wandered for some reason, but I was completely sober. When the truck in front of me turned right, and I automatically think, well, the truck turned right, so it must be a green light. So I press on the gas and go ahead, and then I hear some light honking but ignore it. I was halfway through the intersection when I realized that the light was red, and for some reason I just stopped. I then hear a car behind me swerve so they don't hit me. So I keep on going and had to stop on the side of the road to process what had just happened to me. This is when things get weird. My friends never mention Audrey to me again, and a month later she starts dating somebody else, Jake, so I assume that was why. However, a few months later I bring up to Maggie about how she tried to set me up with Audrey, but when I did this she just stared at me blankly and says, "No, we were trying to set her up with Jake." I thought she was pulling my chain, but I went back to old text messages and couldn't find any that mentioned Audrey in the first place, let alone friends trying to hook me up with her. The weird thing about this experience is I didn't black out at all, and I was conscious the whole time, so I don't know if I passed away and just switched to some other reality through death, but I know very well that I wasn't imagining this at all. Also, Maggie claimed that she had been having consistent dreams of me dying, and they stopped when this event happened. A reality shift is the only thing that I can come up with to explain why things seem different in my life now. This happened after I graduated high school in 2012. I was staying with my grandparents, and I asked my grandpa to use his car so that I could get a haircut. On my way back, I was sitting at a light waiting for the turn arrow and was first in line to turn. As the arrow turned green, I heard a woman's voice in my head that said, "Don't go." It caught my attention to where I ended up being stunned for a second, wondering what just happened. So I waited a second or two longer, holding up traffic, still trying to figure out the oddity of hearing someone else's voice in my head. And that was the real reason that I waited. Otherwise, I would have been a goner, because I would have turned at that green light. But instead, I waited about 3 to 5 seconds. And as I waited, I saw a semi-truck couldn't stop and ended up in the middle of the intersection when it finally did. It was a sloped highway coming off a bridge. Hearing that voice when I did saved my life, as it kept me from getting into a horrific accident that would have taken my life. I can't imagine what would have happened to my family and loved ones had they had to hear the bad news of my passing. However, I always think about that voice in my head and the great advice it gave me. Always pay attention to yourself and your intuition. You never know, it might save you the way it saved me. It was about a year ago, and I was driving home from work listening to some music. And as usual, I was daydreaming during the ride, but one of my daydreams seemed a bit odd and random. It was a vivid picture of my sister, and I'm waking her up and her husband in the middle of the night because their dog was profusely vomiting everywhere. It didn't sit well with me, so I texted my sister asking if her dog was okay, and she said yes and asked why. So I explained what happened and what I was thinking about, the whole daydream. She laughed and told me to F off and that her dog was fine. So I carried on with my day, and I just finished off the night by going to sleep after work. But as I wake up in the morning, I had several missed calls and text messages from her at about 3 a.m. that they needed to take the dog to the vet because he had been profusely vomiting. She told me that I'm cursed. This isn't the first time something like this has happened to me, but that's why I made this post, because it's so strange. Anyways, I want to know if anybody else had experienced a similar type of coincidence as me, and if they also thought that it was a glitch. I ordered groceries today for delivery because of this whole lockdown that's still on. Everything was there except for one item, some fresh fish that was in a paper bag. I flagged the delivery driver down before he leaves and asked if he could check the back of his truck, but there was nothing there. I wished him well and gave him a tip for his troubles, and he said that he needed to go on his way. No one had been in my apartment other than me, and I hadn't taken anything out of the bag at that point. But as I went back inside to my place of living, my fish is sitting on the opposite side on the other end of the kitchen, completely away from the rest of the grocery bags. I'm convinced that this delivery boy was some kind of a wizard. And what's strange is that he had a certain vibe about him too. I ended up prepping the fish, cooking it, and eating it, and it was delicious. So I thank that wizard delivery boy for the fish. And I'd like to say a lot of the times I read about these glitches and they're kind of frightening or a bit scary. However, not all glitches can be. I guess it just depends on the person having the experience and how they see it. This happened at the Woodland Hills Mall in Tulsa, Oklahoma, November the 23rd of 2020, around 6 p.m. or so. My husband and I were completely sober as usual, and we took our 2 kids, our baby and a school-aged child, to JCPenney's in the mall. Due to the lockdown, if there are more than 2 entrances to a store, they block off all the entrances but one. This JCPenney's had a top-level and bottom-level entrance because it was inside of a mall on the 1st and 2nd floor. And we had been going to this mall and this JCPenney store since we were kids, and none of the areas inside of the store have changed at all since we were younger. We were on the top floor, the 2nd floor when we went in, and PacSun was on the outside of the store as usual. The display was a white soft sweater on the left and softer tones on the other side, and I touched one of them and I commented on it. We walked around the left side of the store to the back to find the single tiny elevator that could only fit one family. We got in and hit the button for floor 1, and there was only 2 buttons. Floor 1 and floor 2. There were no buttons to other numbered floors in that building. We got out on floor 1, where the shoes are, to the left, and I decided that I wanted to find another store as none of the snow boots fit our oldest child. We walked a few feet back to the elevator that was literally only a few feet from the shoe area, so we could see the entire time, and we got in to hit the button, number 2, to head back up to the floor so we could exit floor 1, which had an entrance that was closed off and gated and everything else because of the lockdown. Then the elevator moved, and as we went up, it opened up to a totally different part of the store from where we originally entered. It was the home decor, and none of the clothes racks that had been there upon the first entrance on the 2nd floor were there. We felt uneasy as everybody in the store was silent and everything was still, and it just seemed like everybody was staring at us the entire time. Then we were even more freaked out to find out that where our exit should have been, there was this gate and closed off portion of the store. We walked back to the same little elevator after that. We got on and hit floor 1 again, and it opened to where we had been with the shoes on the left. But this time it was like some kind of a weird combination of the original floor 2 when we first entered and floor 1, as halfway through we saw the display and layout that we had seen upon the entrance on floor 2 when we first arrived at JCPenney, with that sweater on the left, but there was now a green and red sign with different colors and designs on it. The entrance was completely open, as if it had been switched, and we felt this complete dread and utter silence, and there was just more stairs. We exited past Starbucks on the first level totally confused because everything felt off and everything looked different. The entrance was completely open as if it had been switched, and we still felt completely confused about everything, and there was a sense of dread and utter silence as everybody was staring at us again. We exited past Starbucks on the first level totally confused. My husband said he felt like something shifted as we walked away from the store. People stopped staring and the mall was loud again, and when we took the mall middle elevator outside of JCPenney's to get back to the 2nd level of the mall itself to head to the other stores on that floor, I felt completely terrified to see that the gate to JCPenney's was open on level 2. The display was the original white sweater looking downstairs, and the gate was closed from my vantage point on that first floor as I looked down those stairs that we had just exited out of. It was honestly the creepiest things, or one of the creepiest things I'd ever experienced. We got our kids' boots, and we got them from this children's place, and left looking at the JCPenney in the distance. The second of our kids fell asleep in the car as we kept talking about it. And I told my husband, I said, "You saw that too, right?" And he confirmed everything that I had seen. So I knew that I wasn't crazy. And it was almost like we walked into some kind of a different reality or some kind of a different place where it was similar to our world, but not really. That's when I found this forum about these glitch stories and decided to post my story here, as I know now that I'm not alone.